In conversation with Maurice Burnette Ford. Maurice Burnette Ford is an author, public speaker, and founder of Five Times a Slave LLC. A formerly incarcerated man turned mentor and motivator, Maurice uses his life story to shed light on the deep connection between childhood trauma, addiction, and criminal behavior. His powerful books, Five Times a Slave, or Childhood Trauma Can Create a Career Criminal, and Five Times a Slave, The Death and Restoration of Maurice Burnette Ford, serve as a raw, transformative testimonies of personal growth and redemption. Today, Maurice speaks in prisons, jail, and rehabilitation centers, helping others realize they have the remote control to change the channel of their lives. His mission is clear to turn pain into purpose and give hope to the hopeless. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Maurice Ford. How are you doing today, Maurice? Lovely to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm doing great. Doing great.
Absolutely, it's quite a joy, really, that we are here to sit down several miles away from one another to talk about your lovely both novels, which I find to be quite awesome. And I must say also that you have an amazing bio. Thank you very
Thank you.
much for, coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Maurice, I need to first say that I am impressed by the description page of your book, Five Times a Slave, The Death and Restoration of Maurice Burnette Ford on Amazon. And I would like us to start today's conversation by you telling us what inspired you to write this book, what led you to this path to becoming an author. When was that time you realized you wanted to tell a story and you realized the story asked to be five times a slave? If you can run us through the making of this book, that would be great.
Yeah, sure, man. I named the book Five Times a Slave because of the 5 times I've been to prison in my state of Arkansas, in the ADC, Arkansas Department of Corrections. And my
Wow.
from the age of 20 to the age of 37, that was my fifth time when I was 37. And some way or another, I came across the 13th Amendment on the fifth time, the last time I was in prison, and I was reading how slavery was abolished, but except as punishment for a crime. So when I read that, I kind of was like, wow, I put myself back in slavery like 5 times. So that title kind of stuck with me, like 5 times a slave. I done this like 5 different times, So I felt kind of, I felt the shame, what I'm saying? That was like one of the reasons amongst a few that I decided that was going to be my last time in prison, the fifth
Mm.
time after reading that 13th Amendment. And I put that amendment too in my first book as well, kind of give people a feel of why, I named it Five Times a Slave. But when I got out of prison, I was out like 2, 3 years before I wrote my first book. And I was having a feeling like, it's one thing to switch your mentality, but I feel like I had to do more, what I'm saying? I had to pay it forward. I started like volunteering for like, to be a mentor, in
Mm.
Los Angeles where I live now. And I was like, I gotta tell my story, you know what I'm saying? Because I know my story could help someone, and it has, So that's how I first started thinking about putting my book out. And I'm a truck driver by trade. So what I would do was every day after I shut down, you got to shut down your truck for 10 hours every day, right? After you run a certain amount of hours, I would write.
Mm.
So every day I do this, right? I would
Wow.
scrap, right? Because I didn't, when I started sharing my story and thinking about and actually writing my crimes, I felt kind of like I didn't want to share that with people. I'm like,
Wow.
man, people don't need to know this, man. It's kind of why did I do this? Like, dang, why did I now I'm looking at it from the outside looking in. I'm like, man, why did I even do this? I don't think I want to
Mm.
share this. But I was like, man, this could really help somebody, and it has though. So I get a lot of people reaching out, telling me how my first book, helped them out, sending
Wow.
it to they son in the prisons, what I'm saying, things like that. But to answer that question directly, I feel like I had to do more, do something different, and just do the right thing out here. I feel like I needed to get back and share my story.
Mm. I must say that that is such a pulling story you've got in there. And that is quite a lot even to deal with quite individually and personally. And that is really, really captivating and it got me wondering how those years of being in prison would have looked like for you. Now, I would like us to go a bit much deeper, and of course, without giving much information away, could you tell us about some of the themes, subject lines that the would-be reader would experience picking up five times a slave?
The book is set up like I've been to prison 5 different times, right? So I go from the traumatizing event that I experienced as a 13-year-old, right? I go
Mm,
from that, and I go to how it, I don't want to say caused me, but it kind of led me to become a career criminal. And I go from my first charge I ever caught when I was 20. Then I go to the second. I talk about that. I talk about all of them in totality. The
mm,
first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And that's how I set up the first book, which is not a really long book. But that's how I set up the first book. I go from a traumatizing event at the age of 13, and I show how that just the drug abuse, drug dealing, shootings, you know, since just go stealing
mm.
cars, just go from there all the way out into
Wow.
the fifth chapter.
Wow, that is something I would love to catch up on really, because that's an interesting
Right.
story. And
It's an interesting read,
yeah,
definitely.
and I would like to, because I love basically we can say this is a memoir basically. I love to see how the whole thing transpired. That's an interesting one because I love reading real life stories.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting
Yeah.
story.
Absolutely. And also, you've used this really powerful analogy of the remote control, quote unquote. Now, can you break that down for us? How does it relate to the way people can take control of their lives back and change the channel of their life?
Sure. I like to say when I use that analogy, I don't really believe in like change. I don't believe we change like that
Mm,
as people. I believe we can switch our mentality. So that's why I rather use that. Some people can say change to mean the same thing, but I think it's like switching my mentality. And I
mm,
share that in my second book. It's like my second book is 20 chapters. It's more of my about my transformation. And I
mm,
talk about how in chapter two, I still think the same. I feel the same. I look the same. You know, I have all the same thoughts I had when I was committing crimes. You know, my mentality has switched though, so to where I don't do those things. You know, I it just switched. You know, all of a sudden. So I compared it to a TV. How like we have a remote control, we change the channel, and we don't go back. You know, saying most likely, and when I'm explaining the mentality, you don't go back. You just switch the channel and you switch the channel, you evolve, you know. So that's why I use the analogy about if I can switch my mentality to a different channel, so can you, you know, because if I can do it, if I can switch my mentality, I know anybody can do it who's been a criminal
yeah,
or outside of being a criminal, you know, just any
yeah,
everyday people. If I can switch my mentality, so can you. It could be a law-abiding citizen. You might need to switch your mentality from anything, like
mm,
alcoholism or anything, you know, anything that's not a crime. It
yeah.
just don't deal with crimes. It works for all people.
Mm. Wow, that's quite an amazing one as well. I've been enjoying your answers to this question. Quite beautiful and quite awesome. And I'd like you to show the book to the camera if you have a copy there, just so it's what it looks like.
Yeah, this is my
Yeah,
newest release. My newest release,
yes.
Five Times a Slave, The Death and Resurrection of
Mm,
Maurice Burnette Ford. And this is the transformation. This book is what people was asking for after the first one, because the first book is basically my criminal history. People want to
mm,
see like how did I transition from that to this, you know. So I was like, yeah, I gotta explain that I can't just leave them there in my criminal past, you know.
mm.
So this book is more like a self-help book, you know.
Oh,
I target everybody, like especially people getting out of prison, in prison, and I share a lot of things in here. I share about my first chapter is talking about the mental switch. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
How I've done that and how it's a science behind it as well. Like how trauma rewires your brain, so you have
mm.
to unrewire that the thing that trauma did to your brain as you
Yeah.
transitioning. You know, I talk about that in this book
Mm. Oh,
and a
wow.
lot of things amongst a lot of things. I share a lot of things in this book. It's 20 chapters of great information.
Wow. Oh, wow. This is such a wine experience for me. It's captivating and quite exciting one. And I wanted to ask you this very important question. A lot of people have their own ideas about what leads someone down the wrong path. Some could say it's because of bad parenting. Some could say because of maybe poverty. Some could say it's because of maybe these so many reasons actually we can see even in our current world today. But then a lot of people have their own ideas about what leads someone down the wrong path. But from your own perspective, what do you think most people get wrong about how childhood trauma connect to criminal behavior? I'd love your take on that if you'd like to share.
Well, yeah, I can speak for me and things I see as well. It is a lot of reasons why. It's not only one.
Mm,
For me, it was because I come from a great family, but what I experienced as a young adult, 13 years old, um, I shared it a little bit of that. Like I didn't witness, but I witnessed the aftermath of my father being murdered. So that is the initial thing that
mm,
rewired my brain. You know what I'm saying, with trauma. So from that, I went all the way to the left. But I think what people get wrong is like there is one face for all of it. You know what I'm saying? It's not one face. It's many things that a person could be traumatized by that rewires their brain. It could be poverty. It could be. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't experience that. It could be not having no one, like not having a
mm,
stable mother, father, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I seen out in my neighborhood, I seen all of it. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
But that's the one thing I think they get wrong, as well as how people feel like you might blame your trauma for the things that you
mm.
do, but it's really not you blaming it. You just haven't dealt with it. I didn't deal with my trauma when I was 13. My
Wow.
dad worked for Union Pacific, and they offered counseling, but who, like, what 13-year-old is gonna say, hey, yeah, I wanna go to a therapist? That's something
Mm,
you have to make them do as a parent. You know what I'm saying? So I
absolutely.
didn't accept it. I didn't understand what therapy was. I thought what I said was it's not gonna change the situation. So why go? You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? So what therapy really is for is to talk you through those emotions that you're feeling. But I
mm,
displayed them in the streets, you know what I'm saying? Out of
yeah.
out of anger. So yeah, we when people get wrong about that, like we're like um no one is like using trauma as a crutch. I don't think, you know what I'm
Mm,
saying? But what we need is more understanding people, more counseling. And also I always thought this too. Judges like should judge people based on their rewiring of their brain,
yeah.
like the trauma, their environments. You know what I'm saying? Something like that.
Yeah.
If a person come from poverty, no mom, no dad, how you
Mm,
gonna blame them for doing something and they come from nothing?
mm,
You know what I'm saying? So judge them according to their environment, not the crime. You know what I'm saying? So
wow.
yeah.
Wow, that is quite a lot you've mentioned in there. That is such an, I can feel the heaviness in your words. I can feel the heaviness, the depth of this book. It sounds quite interesting and quite awesome. And now I'm just curious, it just pop up in my head. Your story involves deep struggle with addiction and time behind bars. Now you've come out and you've written a book around it, and not just one, but two. Now, I wanted to ask you, how did sharing this experience feels for you? Because sometimes when I ask authors, especially those who have written memoirs, how do you feel? Striking memoirs, actually. How do you feel after you've written this book? Like, oh, Peter, I feel so naked. I feel
Right.
so vulnerable. I feel a
Yeah.
lot of people are staring at my nakedness and I cannot see them.
Right.
It is just so different feedbacks actually. Now I wanted to ask you, how did sharing those experiences feels for you? Was it therapeutic? Was it stylishly challenging or a combination of both or something else? Tell us, please. I'd
Man.
like to know.
Yeah, it was a combination first about how I felt all that because I was like, man, the first book I stuck to me. Sure, I had people around me. We was all doing the same thing, but I chose to stick to my story and not telling nobody else's or
Mm,
nobody else's involvement. So I stuck to everything I was took a plea for, in my book, nothing
mm,
else. So first it was that, then it was what people would think, and but it was therapy. Once I wrote it out, I
mm,
felt better, and I was thinking. I remember thinking like, man, this is it. After this book. I'm closing that chapter to my life. I'm going forward. So I got it out. Everybody that know me already knew basically, but sometimes some people didn't really know details, but still they know me. That was around me every day,
Mm,
especially the why part. You know what I'm saying? How, because
mm.
people can see your life and see what's going on to you, but they don't know how you take that. I might take
Absolutely.
seeing that different than you would take seeing that. What traumatized me might not traumatize you, or what traumatized
Mm,
you might not traumatize me. You know what I'm saying? So,
absolutely.
and I heard that word as well. I have a cousin that told me, like, she was like, "Thank you for being so vulnerable in your book," and I was like, I had to go look the word up, to be honest, because I really didn't even know what that meant. I was just sharing my story. And so I was like, yeah, I was vulnerable, she meant by sharing
Wow.
those details and all those things, so okay,
Mm,
that's cool. So I felt all of it, man. But at the end, it felt good when I started seeing people reaching out and talking about how they're gonna send this to their sons, and people buying them here and sending them to their people, their brothers in
mm,
prison, and just personal stories people told me about it, man. So I was like, yeah, I did the right thing, because I scrapped this book, the first book, so many times I started not to put it out because I didn't want people
mm.
to, know those things as well. But
Yeah, I
I'm glad
understand.
I put it out. You know what I'm saying? That was the best thing I could have done.
Wow. Wow. Wow, such an amazing one, really. That's such a bold step you've taken. A courageous one that is quite worthy of commendation, worthy of, applaud, worthy of praise. Yeah, that's a beautiful one, really. And I wanted to ask you too, for people currently incarcerated or just coming out of the system, what do you hope they will feel or take away after reading your story?
I hope they'll see that they can do it too. Like over the 4th of July weekend, I was in my home city,
Mm.
state Little Rock, Arkansas, and I spoke at a correctional facility, and I was relating to them, my story. I've been to prison probably more than everybody in there. You know what I'm saying? So I know
Wow.
this is my thing. If I can switch my mentality to a different channel, then so can you. I just want them to know that you can switch your mental, what you think, what you do every day on an everyday basis, and just take it one day at a time. And once you made it to that point, you'll feel it. When you through.
Mm.
I've been to prison 5 times. I really wasn't through the first, second, third, and fourth time, even though I
Mm.
said I was. But that fifth time, you feel something. I felt something different. But I
Mm.
want to let people know too how I look. I've talked about everything in this book. It's not peaches and cream. You just not gonna. I remember when I got out the fifth time and had my commercial driver's license, like what, a month or two after I got released from prison, and I wasn't getting a job due to my criminal history. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking like, man, it just don't. And before I get out, I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna change my life, switch my mentality. Everything is just gonna happen. Boom, boom, boom. It don't happen like that all the time. I was remember sitting thinking like, man, I ain't nothing. I mean, I've changed my life. I switched my mentality, but nothing's really happening right for me. But I'm letting people know that you got to stay down, man. You got to keep moving forward, because you already know what's behind. You already know what that's gonna lead to. So I was more interested in seeing the unknown, what I never experienced. I never done right for a length of time. I always went right back to
Mhm.
prison, maybe a couple months doing right, and start back to my old living and go right back to prison. So I wanted to see
Wow.
what life would look like years of doing the right thing. I knew it would fall into place, but I want to tell people it might take a little while. Yeah, everything
Yeah.
do, but keep going forward, and
Mm.
don't go backwards. It'll work
Mm.
out. It'll work itself out. Trust the
Wow.
process. I had a friend told me that. She told me when I got out this time to trust the process. And I really didn't even know what that meant like that. I'm like, trust the process. That's cool. That's a nice thing to say. But now
Mm.
I understand what trust the process mean, man. You,
Yes.
you know the process. Just trust it and
Just
just keep
trust it.
going forward.
That's a lot of story you've shared in there, really. And I can feel that's an amazing one. Quite beautiful and quite pulling. Now let's talk about your other book, Five Times a Slave, How Childhood Trauma Can Create a Career Criminal. The subtitle is quite striking to me. Why did you choose it? And what message were you hoping to get across with it?
That came to me, man. Like I'm talking about the 5 times a slave, my 5 times in prison, and how I related it to the 13th Amendment,
Mm.
which I have in the first book. I have on the first page. But how childhood trauma can create a career criminal, and I didn't want to say how it caused the career so I just wanted to, because it doesn't cause everyone to become a career criminal, so I didn't want to make it like this is the standpoint for that. No, it's not, but that's what it did to me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I took the trauma, the rewiring of my brain. I started committing crimes, and didn't care. You know what I'm saying? So that's where that title come from. How childhood trauma can create a career criminal. It can, it cannot. So that's where that come from. And it was just a length of crime spree, you can say, of being a career criminal from the age of 20 to the age of
Mm,
37. You know, yep.
that's 17 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I was in and out of prison. I didn't stay out, man. Maybe the longest I stayed out one time, I think from 2009 to 2011. But other than that, it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth,
Wow.
back and forth. Yep.
Wow. Wow. I would love to jump on this much afterward. Quite beautiful and quite captivating and quite interesting. It's compelling. It's very inviting. Your answers to this
Right.
question is inviting for a viewer to want to check out what is really
Exactly.
involved, what is
Right.
contained in the book. Now, one of the big ideas in the book is how early trauma can change a person's entire life path. In your view, how can individuals and communities step in to break this cycle, if in any way?
Okay. Yeah. I think I believe I push on young adults especially. Let's try to catch it when it first happened, and not like me.
Yeah.
I've looked at myself in the mirror enough in prison to where I think I got it. So I know I got it. So we don't want what I don't want is people to have to go through that. So
Mm,
what I what I support and I recommend is therapy. When
mm,
if your child has been traumatized by any kind of event, any kind, get them in front of a therapist, whether they want to or not. You know what I'm saying? If they don't want to, they don't know what's best for them at that
mm,
age. So get them in front of a therapist, have them talk. If they don't want to talk, to do, take a game, take a phone, something like that. But
yeah.
get them in front of a therapist. Don't let them sleep on that. That's what I
Mm,
think is the problem. One of the problems with our community, especially Black American community. You know what I'm saying? We don't
mm,
have too many traumatized adults, young adults, women and
mm,
men, who haven't talked it out. So they just mad at everybody. You know what I'm saying? They lashing out.
mm.
So I recommend therapy, because once the trauma is done, you can't undo it. There's nothing you can
At
do about
all,
it. You can't
yeah.
protect people from trauma. You know what I'm saying? But we need to come with the solution, and that's talking to a professional, a therapist.
Oh, wow. That's another amazing answer you've got to these questions. Quite beautiful and quite awesome. And just in case, apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe say currently working on? And just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview and would love to get a copy of any of your book, on what platforms are they available on for purchase?
Both of my books are available on Amazon. Just hit 5 times a slave, and both of them will pop up. Also, if you want signed copies, you can reach out to 5timesaslave.com, number 5timesaslave.com. That's my website, and I get you an autograph copy there of both books. I got the hardback for my newest release and the paperback, and just the paperback with the first book. And also the second book
Yeah.
on Amazon is in production now. It should be ready like the end of this month, the audio book version
Mm.
of the second book release. And
Wow.
on Amazon, you can go on Amazon, man, and check me out, and sign copies on 5timesaslave.com.
That's amazing. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Maurice Ford, Five Times a Slave, directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles and also on his website. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Maurice, for coming on to talk about your impressively written memoir. Very captivating, very awesome, quite powerful, and so compelling and extremely inviting. This is so beautiful. I am impressed. I am captivated, and thank you very much for coming on to talk to the audience on Pearl about this fantastically written book. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story, man. I love it. Thanks a lot.